Last week we came together in sorrow and despair, filled with hurt and anger at the murder of 9 people, gunned down in a church Bible study by an assailant who later said, "I almost didn't kill them because they were so nice to me." This week, we celebrate the removal of the Confederate battle flag from the State House of Alabama. We celebrate that Texas, Georgia, and Virginia are no longer issuing license plates with that flag on it. Just yesterday, Bree Newsom climbed the flagpole at the State House in Columbia, South Carolina, and removed the flag. That even though the state's governor had called for its removal, the legislators in South Carolina seems to be unable to rouse themselves to take it down, only agreeing to discuss it sometime. And so Bree climbed that flagpole and cut the flag down. Yay, Bree. The National Park Service no longer sells merchandise with the Confederate flag, even at historical sites. Walmart, Amazon, Sears, eBay, and many other companies no longer sell the damn thing. Did I just say damn? Yes, I did. But there's still a lot of work to be done in dismantling racism. It would be blindly optimistic to think for even a moment that the task will ever be finished. But we're seeing a change. This week has been a week of changes. It's contained 2 landmark Supreme Court decisions. On Thursday, the court affirmed the provisions of the Affordable Care Act, for which our United Church of Christ has been working since 1991. And then Friday brought the Supreme Court's decision making marriage equality the law in all 50 states, a goal which our denomination has been working on since 1975, 40 years ago, when General Synod passed a resolution regarding civil liberties without discrimination related to affectional or sexual preference. A resolution that was amplified 10 years ago with the United Church of Christ's resolution on marriage equality. And of course, making it even sweeter is that our General Synod is meeting right now in Cleveland, so that we're already gathered to celebrate. I need to point out, though, that the Unitarian Universalists are also meeting in Portland, Oregon, and the Episcopal Church is having their national gathering in Salt Lake City. And so these partner denominations who've also been working on marriage equality are all already gathered for the party. You know, none of this progress was a foregone conclusion. At times it looked like none of these things would even become reality. It looked like the Confederate flag would continue to fly, that the important work of ensuring health care for all people would be scuttled, that lesbian and gay Americans would continue to be denied equality with straight Americans. But perseverance and faithfulness have paid off. And you know, that's really the message of today's scripture lessons. In Mark's Gospel, we encounter Jesus just returned from a trip across the Sea of Galilee, where he'd been traveling through Gentile country, where he had cast out a legion of demons from a man, with those demons entering a herd of swine and driving them over a cliff. Now, though, Jesus was home. And there was a crowd of people who had gathered there by the beach to welcome him. And as he stepped from the boat, he was met there by Jairus, the president of the local synagogue. "Jesus, come quickly," he said, falling at Jesus' feet. "My little girl is dying. There's nothing we can do, but you can make her well. Please, come." Jairus was desperate. You could hear it in his voice cracking as he asked Jesus to come and heal his daughter. You could hear the fear, but you could also see the faith in his eyes as he came to Jesus. Can you imagine what that must have been like? Waiting there for Jesus' answer, with hope and panic warring within you. Waiting. And then having Jesus reach down and help you up. "Of course I'll come. Let's go." The two started making their way to Jairus' home just a little ways along. And that's when things went bad. You know, I'm not a patient person. I like to try and be patient, but I'm not patient. I hate it when I can't move in a crowd, when there are people standing around chatting with each other and not even paying attention to the fact that they're blocking my way. Don't even get me started talking about the person on Sunday morning driving up Route 7 slower than the speed limit. Yes, I was behind them this morning. For Jairus, though, it wasn't just impatience at people blocking his way. He wasn't just inconvenienced. This delay of the crowd pressing in upon him and Jesus was endangering the life of his daughter. Jesus was his only hope, and was being delayed by people who didn't have the good sense to see that it wasn't a time for lollygagging. And Jesus wasn't even putting on the lights and sirens to hurry things along. Jairus was about ready to explode, his nerves jangling within him every time someone innocently blocked Jesus' path. And then the unthinkable happened. From out of the crowd, someone's hand reached forth and touched Jesus' robe. And Jesus stopped and turned. "Who touched me?" he asked. "Who touched you?" Jairus couldn't contain his anxiety. "Who touched you? We're in a crowd, Jesus. Keep moving." But Jesus stopped and scanned the crowd, looking for the person who reached out and touched him. And he saw her, a woman who had gynecological problems that for 12 years had caused her to bleed. A woman that had spent her entire fortune trying to find wholeness, going from doctor to doctor, and found nothing. A woman who had given up all hope until Jesus had come passing by. A woman who had been excluded from society, who was relegated to that red tent. A woman who was unclean, pushing through the crowd, reaching out and touching Jesus, catching only the hem of his robe, but reaching out in her own desperation. Jesus saw her. "Daughter," he said to her, "you may go your way, for your faith has made you well." And then Jesus turned, falling falling into step next to Jairus, who was beside himself with anxiety, who couldn't believe that Jesus had just stopped to talk to this woman. And that's when the messengers arrived. Their eyes cast to the ground, tears staining their cheeks. Jairus, don't bother the teacher anymore. Your daughter's dead. And Jairus didn't have any words. Sorrow, anger. He was past despair. Jesus, who had been on his way, had stopped. And his daughter had died because of it. But Jesus turned to him. Let's keep going. She's not dead. And they made their way to Jairus' house with Peter and James and John, and they found the crowd already gathered, wailing and mourning. And Jesus told them too, she isn't dead, she's just asleep. But these people who knew what death looked like were fooled. And Jesus went in and found the girl laid out on the table. And he took her by the hand and said, "Little girl, get up." And she did. This little girl gets up, and Jesus turns to Jairus and his wife and says, "Don't tell anybody what happened here. Oh, get her some lunch." And that's the end of the story. Jesus has healed this woman who's not named. He's raised from the dead Jairus' daughter, who's not named. He's addressed Jairus and his unnamed wife. And we can look at this and we can see sexism built right into the story, all these women who aren't given names. But I think there's something else going on there too. Because Jairus was Jairus. When we look back, it was a historical figure. We can say, oh yeah, that was him, that's his story. But for this little girl, for this woman who was healed, we don't have names. And we can see ourselves maybe in those roles. They become every woman. They become every person. They become those who are healed, those who are given new life, those who are given a second chance. But Jairus is the impatient one. He's the one who had trouble holding things together because of his fear, but who kept walking because of his faith. So Jairus and these unnamed women, for us, become signs of hope and perseverance, persistence and patience. 12 years that woman had been bleeding. That's as long as Jairus' daughter had even been alive. 12 years. And she kept trying until finally she reached out to Jesus. Jairus kept pushing through the crowd, hoping that Jesus would be there for his daughter, waiting while Jesus stopped to take care of someone else. And even though his emotions got the best of him, he waited. Patience and persistence. Now, the Apostle Paul, in his letter to the church at Corinth, said something that may apply to us today as well, about persistence, about commitment. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I'm going to take his text completely out of context. It was really a stewardship message that Paul was preaching, talking about how people needed to step up and contribute, not just leave it to the folks who've been carrying the load before. But I think today it's appropriate to look at another kind of stewardship. The stewardship of effort, the stewardship of activity. For Paul said, it's appropriate for you who began last year not only to do something, but to desire to do something. Now finish doing it, so that your eagerness may be matched by completing it according to your means. That completion, that doing, is what we've been called to as people of faith. This has indeed been a week of celebration, where we can celebrate Supreme Court decisions, where we can celebrate flags coming down. But the work isn't done. We're at that stage where, in the gospel, the woman was just making fingertip contact with Jesus' robe. We're at that stage in our work for justice that would be the parallel point of Jairus falling down at Jesus' feet and saying, "Come, we need you." The tide has turned in both stories, but it's not over. And the work for justice continues with us as well. Let us celebrate what has been happening this week. May we be blessed as we celebrate the good things that God is doing in our nation. May we also be blessed in those times of sorrow and despair, when we can't see anything but struggle ahead. May we be blessed in the waiting and in the working, in the hoping and in the believing. May we be blessed in the struggle, so that as we continue to work, we might come to know healing, and yes, victory. May it be so. Amen.